Hi, you're listening to the Content Sales Podcast, the show all about how to create content that attracts, converts, and keeps your ideal clients. I'm Susie Daphnis, and my co-host Michelle Falson is here with me. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, Susie, I am doing really well, thank you. A little bit of a frog in the throat, but that's never stopped me before. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you today, of course. And I love it when we have a special guest, and we have one of those today.
I love it too, and we have a special guest, and today's topic is a really practical one that applies to, I think, all our listeners, whether they have products or services, whether you sell high-ticket items or inexpensive ones, and whether you have an online business or a course or an e-commerce store, or you actually have a physical location. What is this amazing topic? We're going to dive right in. Today, we're talking about why your promotional emails might not be working. And we're going to look at the common mistakes that we tend to make in promotional emails and also give you some really practical steps to not only overcome those mistakes, but to get better results with your email marketing. Our special guest, Michelle, is someone new to our world, and her name is Kathy Farah. She is passionate about helping small business owners to really unlock the power of their email lists by doing two things. One, increasing engagement, but also increasing revenue per subscriber, which is such music to our ears. She has over 16 years experience in project management, in leadership, relationship building, all to help her clients deepen their connections with their email subscribers and to re-engage cold email lists as well. So let's go ahead and get Kathy on the line. Hey, Kathy, welcome to the Content Sales Podcast.
Hi, Susie. It's great to be here. And hi, Michelle.
Hi. Great to have you here.
It is so good to have you here because the topic that we are focusing on today is one that we get asked about a lot. It's something that, as marketers ourselves, we're always wanting to improve on. And so we're going to be looking at email marketing and specifically some of the mistakes that you are helping your clients overcome. So what are some of the most common mistakes that you see small business owners make in their promotional emails?
Oftentimes, the problems that I end up seeing is that people are afraid to actually promote to their email list. So either they put way too much out there that's just free, and then when they do finally pull the trigger and actually promote, then people are like, wait a minute, this is not what we were expecting. It's been sort of free up until this point. So it's either we're not doing it often enough, or doing it too much. So you want to provide a lot of value. Some of the other things that you'll see is you're not personalizing the promotions. So starting very early on in your email list building efforts, start to segment, start to think about how you might divide people out. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But having your promotional offers where you're speaking more to the benefits of the offer rather than the features. It's easy for us because we're in our businesses to just list out, here's all the things you're going to get, and sort of miss the fact that the reason why somebody might buy from you is that they're looking to solve a problem or ease an issue that they're dealing with. So you want to be able to present your offers in a way that it's going to be help them see that your offer is the solution that they need. The other thing that I've noticed is the call to action that's in that you don't have a clear next step. So oftentimes either it's hidden away in the content that they've written or it's not very clear. And so you really having a more clear call to action and something that makes it very obvious as to what the next step is to do business with you is a great start. And the final thing when it comes to promotions is that you're not cleaning your list often enough or re-engaging those inactive subscribers. And the reason why that's a problem is that your emails may not be delivered to the right people because you've got too many people on your list that are inactive. So one of those things that just keeping your list clean means that you've got more engaged subscribers, and those are the subscribers that are going to buy from you.
Oh my gosh, each of those things could be its own episode right here on the show.
We're both doing really big nods. Yeah.
So good. So, okay, well, I feel like this next question is a little probably too tactical, but we want our emails, assuming they land in people's inbox and assuming we've done the segmentation, we're using our list in a way that is really targeted. How important is the subject line and optimizing that to lead us to a successful promotional email?
It is very important. It is what the basis of anyone opening. If you look at your own email list or just your own emails as they come in, what grabs your attention is the subject line. It's like the book cover, right? So you need something that's going to grab the attention. And if you already have been offering value to them, just seeing your name and then you personalizing something where you've got their first name in the subject line sometimes will grab their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then if your subject line is giving more of a benefit statement or something that kind of grabs the attention of that you're going to solve a problem for them. And there's added a little bit of curiosity that kind of gets somebody to go, oh, I want to see more about what they're talking about here. This sounds interesting.
That's so interesting because I know my habit in the morning is I'll go through my emails and it's pretty much delete in a lot of cases. Certainly if they're e-commerce emails, but even if they're people I love, sometimes if they don't grab me right there with that subject line, it's like, yes, Seth Godin, I love you. I love all the work you do, but that one's not for me.
Right.
Do you have a recommendation on either the time spent on the subject line compared to other parts of the email, or how do you think about the subject line? Like, do you do it last? Like, give us some hacks.
I do. So I start off with some ideas of subject lines, but a lot of times I will go through and write the promo email first and then go back and do my subject line to just make sure that I'm pulling out and covering the benefits, like what's really going to resonate with somebody, especially as I'm cultivating my email to make sure that I'm really highlighting the benefits, the pain points, and then how my solution's going to help them solve that problem. So then it's a lot easier for me to go back to the subject line and go, ooh, that's something that really grabbed my attention as being a pain point. Maybe I need to put that in the subject line to see if that's something. And then a lot of times the subject line, I also take into account like questions. So a lot of times a question is going to grab your attention with a preview text that's giving you a little teaser of what the answer might be, but not entirely.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a bit like you. Sometimes I'll just get an idea for a subject line. Like that's my way into the email.
Yeah.
So I sort of begin with that. And then, very often, even when I started with the subject line, I might go back and change that subject line later because the email's turned into something else. So I know
oftentimes I was just going to say, looking at what you're seeing, if you start to see a lot of commonalities in your own email, then I'll go, oh, wait, I'm going to change that word to where it's a little different. Like there's too many discovers, or see how, if I start to see that there's subject lines that seem to be repeating in my own email coming in, that I may change something too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to keep a record too of all my top performing subject lines and just kind of do variations on those themes.
Yes.
Yes. That's a great idea. I wanted to loop back to something you said earlier about personalization, because I know both Susie and I are really passionate about people speaking. We're sending out an email maybe to 20,000 people, but we're speaking to one person. One person is going to receive that message. And so you mentioned this idea of sort of segmenting our list so we can be more personal with the communications. Like if I'm a beginner at something and you know that about me and you send me an advanced strategy or vice versa, that could kind of create a barrier between us. And so I'd love to know like how segmentation and personalization kind of not only impacts the effectiveness of our emails, but like some tips for how we might do that in a kind of easy fashion, because this is a giant project too.
Right. It is a giant project. To segment your list and personalize things more, I would think about, like you said, the beginner is a good way of looking at things where you're really taking into account that a beginner needs to have things broken down in a lot simpler way. So our more advanced, we may speak to them very differently, use a little bit of jargon that maybe is common for our industry, but you would not do that for somebody that's a beginner or even somebody new to you. So you also have to take into account, like if they're sort of unaware of what you offer, not speaking so far over their head. Like really think about, okay, who's the audience that I'm speaking to? Who's the person I'm speaking to? Are they fully aware of how my offer, my solution can help solve their problem? And let's not speak so complex. Sometimes making things simpler and reading it from a beginner's mindset. A lot of times I'll have somebody that doesn't know me or what I'm doing look at what I've put together and see if it would be things that they'd go, oh, I get it. I understand what you're trying to say here. So when you're talking about the segmenting, thinking about how you want to try to communicate and where they are, a lot of times I right away survey my audience to understand kind of what their level of interest are, so that I know that my offers are I'm targeting their offer, the offer based off of the things that they're already sort of interested in. And then at what part of the journey they're in, like thinking about, like I was saying earlier, if they're unaware of really what I'm offering and they're not quite clear that there's a problem yet, then I need to be able to bring them down the path to help them see why this is a problem and why fix it.
Yeah, and just to speak to just at one more level of, I guess, nitty gritty around that. So when you do your survey, do you then tag people in your list based on what you learn about them, or if they've bought a certain product that tells you something? Like, how am I getting that information? Because obviously, email is kind of an automated thing. I want to be able to just kind of click a button and find those 300 people or 3,000 people or 30,000 people who satisfy a certain criteria. How are we getting them? How are we tagging them?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. And so I always worry about how nerdy do I get and how much I talk about email marketing. So absolutely. If you're doing a survey, oftentimes what I do is I will, each link that they're just clicking one link, I'm definitely adding a tag based off of the interest. So I'm writing the sentence that maybe makes a lot more sense to them, but I'm tagging it on the back end so that I can send more personalized messages to that particular segment. I also will tag them based off of what they're opting into. So if they have more of an interest in one of my opt-ins over something else, then I immediately tag them based off of that, so that I can make sure that my offers are kind of gearing for what they're already showing some interest in. And then I've had clients look at, like, if they're offering things that are local events, they're going to tag people based off of the local criteria, like that they're local to their area versus somebody. They may do a similar promotion, but one's going to be more of a virtual arrangement versus a local event. So tagging even that specifically as far as where they're located helps.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for expanding on that. And what you're sort of saying and painting the picture for us is that we're learning about our email list all the time based on the actions they take. And this idea of tagging, which is, for anybody listening, is thinking, what is a tag? So if you have an email system that enables you to kind of, in your customer relationship management, if you can put some details in there about that person. And so this is the nitty gritty that's kind of beyond the scope of today's show. But you really want to think about what tags are you applying.
And let me add another little tip to your tag. Also putting something that's very clear. So having something where, like, for instance, if I have a tag that's related to a lead magnet or a free offer, then I will have it say opt in and then something very clear around what that opt in is. And the benefit of that when you're starting out is, as your list is growing, and let's say you have people working in your business. I've had clients that have very large lists that were tagging from the very beginning, but they were using abbreviations that don't make sense to the next person coming in. And so then it's like, well, we want to clean up these tags, but we don't remember what we tagged them, what this was about, what these initials meant. That was so long ago. So keeping in mind that making it very obvious is actually a really good thing.
So good.
Great tip. I want to change the topic a little bit, well, quite a bit actually, and mention two little letters that have had a big impact on all of us. AI.
Yes.
So, are you using it? How are you using it? How do you suggest we integrate AI into specifically creating our promotional emails, and whether that's we're putting our new offer out, or we're in part way through a campaign, or maybe we're re-engaging people? What do you say about AI and promotional emails?
I think AI is great, but here's the thing that a lot of times I start off when I use AI, it's to help me brainstorm. So being very clear about prompting it in such a way that it's very clear who my audience is. What's the goal that I'm trying to accomplish? What are some of the pain points, some of the benefits? And then really speaking to like having it cultivate some ideas for me to think about directions I might take in the way I present something so that it helps me, which my natural tendency is to list off the product features. It helps me to start to see some of the other benefits and the way to word the benefits in such a way that kind of ties to that pain point and flip it a little bit to where I get something different. The bottom line is AI is not human, as we know. So you know your business, and it's so important for you to, as you're getting these ideas, like I will take the idea and then pull it back out, pop it into an editor, and make sure that I'm altering it and making it clear that it makes sense and it's in my language, because AI is also going to write, even if I tell the AI prompt to do things in a certain tone, it's still there may be things that how I speak that's not coming across the way AI would tell me I need to do it. So there's going to be the red lines. It's going to be the little wavy things on Grammarly saying, no, that's not right. That's not grammatically correct. But it's how I speak. And so to keep the way I speak, so it doesn't sound so foreign to somebody when I actually speak to them in person, then I make sure I kind of keep some of those things, even if AI is kind of directing me in a different way. So I always edit and tweak, but it can at least help you in maybe looking at the way you do your promotional emails a little differently, like giving new ideas.
For things like subject lines, I found it really useful. It's like, here's a subject line, give me 5 more like this. And I may not use any of them, but it may give me a word that I hadn't thought to use or a syntax that I hadn't thought to use. So I love that you said that. I always picture AI as wearing a suit and being in a very high level corporate office. Like that's the voice of AI. And that's not most of us. And it's certainly not the women listening to this program. So thank you for that. Now, we have had as much success with emails that are just plain text as we have had with images, with graphics and, elaborate design. What role do you feel that the design and layout plays in really capturing and reading the reader's attention and getting them to take action?
I think I kind of look at things more from the way of a copywriter perspective of I like a lot of white space, kind of breaking the rules of how you would typically write. Like I tell a lot of my clients that you have to get away from the way you learned in school or in other corporate settings, that you're making sentences a lot shorter. Paragraphs are a lot shorter. Like I really break up a lot of the layout, to where there's a lot of white space. There's a lot of small sentences and paragraphs so that I may make something stand out that wouldn't traditionally be laid out that way so that it's more clear, because I understand that people are skimming. I also make sure to use, headlines and break that up so that for the people that do skim, that they can quickly see what matters to them. And oftentimes it's, let's see the price, let's go back up. I want to see the benefits now, bullet points, adding some of those elements and certainly graphics, but you want to do all of that sparingly because the main objective is you want a clear call to action and make sure that stands out very well in the way your email. So I also look at the call to action to make sure that sometimes I use a button, sometimes I use a link, and then I really pay attention to see what seemed to click. What did someone click? Was it the button or the link? So that I use that more often in other promotional emails.
I love that. And I want to talk a little more about calls to action, because obviously, the reason we're sending out promotional emails is because we want someone to do something. And so let's talk about continue the layout conversation, but also just move into what makes a compelling call to action in a promotional email.
It needs to be clear and concise and an action, because
and singular.
And well, it can be, yes, you want to have only one call to action. You may have the same, like 3 times that same call to action at different places in your email. So you've got people that maybe are making the decision very quickly at the top and just want to pop right in and go ahead and take the action. But then there's some people that want to read a little bit more, having another call to action at the top, the middle, and the bottom, the same call to action to take the action, rather than directing them into multiple different places, different, sign up at different locations. You want to just all link to the same location. Action-oriented words and giving a little bit of a sense of urgency. So having things like claim your spot now makes, gives that sense of urgency to have someone take an action, but you want it, this is with a call to action, this is not where you want to be clever. You want it to be very clear. What do I want somebody to do? Is it purchase? Is it schedule a call with me? What do I want them to do? And make that very clear. And it stand on its own line. So that's the thing, is not at the end of a sentence and then you say, claim your spot now. It needs to be separate and have a little bit of white space in between so that it's clear. Boom, there it is.
So it's on its own line, it's standing out, we're sending them to the same place. So we're not saying, follow me on Instagram and buy my thing and, sign up to my newsletter. It's singular. Are you using the same copy every time you make the call to action, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. Sometimes I may make it a little bit, I may make it a little bit more clear, purchase now at the top, but then as I go on, I might have, join us, or something, but it varies. And then I pay attention to, later the statistics of what seemed to work. Like sometimes people just want it very clear, purchase now, because the idea is you've sold it beforehand. You've laid out the benefits. So when they're seeing that button, then it's a very clear reason that's there. You've already done the work in the copy above.
Got it. Thank you so much. Awesome.
Kathy, you're speaking my love language with these clear and concise calls to action that we have already built the email around, kind of arriving at that point where I want to claim this special offer right now. I'm going to ask you one of these questions where we could do a whole episode on it, but it's a really important one. I'm sure if anyone's listening right now, they're thinking, when are they going to get to this question? And it is, how do we avoid landing in that darn spam folder? Like, what are some of your very best tips, the things that where perhaps have a blind spot to, some absolute bread and butter things we should be doing to get out of that spam folder?
Your subject line, first off, avoid the spammy language. So having a lot of exclamation points, that's not really where you want to necessarily, you got to be careful about the way you word the subject line. So you may say last chance, but you may not necessarily want to say buy now or something like that. And one of the things that you can do if you're a little confused as to what might be spammy language is look in your spam folder and just take a glance at some of the subject lines and see what pops out as like, ooh, okay, I'm seeing this, like your name in all caps, things like that if there's a lot of capital letters, the problem is the email service providers are filtering those things out and putting them right off into a spam folder before your reader's even seen it. The other thing too is, if you've gotten past the point of hopefully they're opening it, you want to make sure it gets to their email. It goes back to, again, re-engaging and cleaning your list. So if your sender reputation is already sort of low because you're sending emails to a lot of inactive subscribers, then you can run into a problem where things are going to the spam folder because Google or Yahoo are making the quick decision that your content's not valuable anyway. So for the people that actually want to receive your emails, they're not getting them. It's going to the junk folder. So keeping a clean list is important because, again, it's better to have a small engaged list. That's going to be more likely to buy than having a large list of inactive subscribers. And if you have an email list, you have inactive subscribers. All of us do. It's just a matter of how we handle and what we do with them. after the fact,
Just a quick aside, are you tending to remove people who've been active for, say, 6 months, 3 months? What is the time frame you recommend as we talk about cleaning the list? Who am I taking off? Who am I considering inactive or not the right person for my list?
So I start off I focus first on re-engagement after 3 to 6 months. So I will automate that process and I will send 2 re-engagement emails out to those subscribers because people get busy. So we know that sometimes things might have already gone into the spam folder on occasion. So you want to give an opportunity for them to be able to re-engage with you and remind them why they signed up to begin with. But if somebody has not re-engaged after those 2 times, usually I'll tell you this, there's 2 types. If it's in that 3-month period, usually those are cold subscribers. They're a little bit easier to kind of get them back in if they were really interested in what you had to offer. 6 months and longer tend to be getting into cold or getting into old subscribers. And those sometimes are a little bit harder. And those will probably be the ones that you most likely will end up removing is the ones that it's been a while and they're still not engaging after the re-engagement. So usually I remove them. I have an automation within my email system that if they haven't opened, and it's usually about 100 days because I give them a chance, a week to open the first one, a week to open the next one. If they don't open it, then I just go ahead and unsubscribe them.
I love it. The automation piece is a great idea. So you mentioned right at the start, one of the big mistakes we have is that we message our audience too frequently or not frequently enough. I want to dig into this a little bit more. Do you have any do's and don'ts about this frequency? How often should we, as small business owners, be sending promotional emails to our list?
Generally, I would say you could use the 80-20 rule. So you're sending 80% value to your email list first, and then 20% promotion. And a lot of times you could say, depending on how often you're emailing your list, if it's weekly, then I would say you could do that once a month and send an offer every month. If you're emailing more often, then you might be able to do that, twice. But I think you need to gauge by what's happening, how engaged your audience is to what that frequency is on the offer. And if it really has a very strong value, then people don't get frustrated with receiving those promotional emails. The other thing that I would recommend is considering putting a mute option on your emails. So for those people that maybe that offer is not the right time for them, having something that's like a little line that says, if you're not interested in receiving our, this special right now, then go ahead and click this button. You won't receive any more emails from us. And then you're tagging that group of subscribers with mute and then eliminating them from the rest of the promotion. So sometimes my clients have felt more comfortable with that if they know that they've got to. With promotional emails, let's say I'm doing a once a month, I'm going to send multiple emails around that promotion to kind of, so I usually kind of pick a time frame, 1 week, let's say that it's open cart, close cart, and I might send, I may send an email the first day and then wait until so let's say I do, each day I might send an email to kind of remind them of the offer. But the last day I may send a couple as the cart's closing to kind of say, hey, last chance, this is your time to be able to purchase. So there is going to be several emails that come through when you're actually promoting. So having that mute option sometimes is a nice touch to, make sure for people that maybe it's not the right time for them to act on that offer, that they can silence that for a while.
Okay. May I ask you a follow-up question to that? Because
Yes.
a lot of our listeners see the launch models out there. So they may have a weekly email that goes out, but then there's a few times a year where they are sending like 20 emails in a week because they're following that, that promotional offer where they're sending multiples. They may send 2 to 5 emails on the last day, and they get concerned that people are opting out of their promotions at that point. And this goes back to them, well, I shouldn't be emailing so much because someone complained. Could you speak to that a little bit? Because a lot of us do have that cadence where it's like steady, 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 boom, and then back to steady. Yeah.
Well, something that I a lot of times will do is I pay attention to what's happening to the promotion. So those final emails, I may focus that more on people that have opened the email and clicked and taken some sort of action, that there might have been an interest, but they didn't take the action, that I may remind them, like, because I know for myself, sometimes I'll see something that I really thought was a good offer and
Right.
just didn't take action right then. And the reminder that, it's the last chance, I got to do it today, I'll go and take the action. But I think you also have to take a look at your own email list and your subscribers. You don't necessarily have to follow sending tons of emails if that doesn't seem to be the right for your audience. So I would say alter that. If you're starting to, you pay attention to, as the promotion's going on, you pay attention to what's happening. If people are unsubscribing, then you may want to change a little bit. Now you're going to have people unsubscribe. So sometimes you just have to bless and release and let them
Bless
go.
and release. I love that.
But you do understand that it is a good reminder. So I think some of that, don't follow everything that everybody else is doing. Really pay attention to what your audience needs.
I love that. I love that. And something that you've said consistently throughout this interview is that you look at the data, you look at the statistics. Could you take us a little deeper into that on, how are you measuring the success of your promotional emails and your promotional email campaigns?
Yes. So oftentimes what I do is I will take a look at, so I keep a spreadsheet of all of this. So I really geek out on all of this. So I have a spreadsheet, and each of my promotions that I send out, I put down the time of day that I sent the email to what audience. So based off of what tag, so that I know if I've segmented them, that who are they going to. So I'm going to track what the open rates were, what my click-through rates were, how, was I able to convert, and how many unsubscribes were happening for that one email. And
are you looking at this daily in a campaign?
Generally what I do is I kind of go a halfway point. So I'll have all of it noted. So I'll beforehand, because we're planning everything, and a lot of times we're doing it automation, I'll have my spreadsheet already filled out where I know what my subject lines are, what I've, intended. A lot of times I'll even maybe make a tweak to a subject line if I'm noticing something didn't really do well earlier in the promotion. So I'll pay attention to some of those things. So I do look at it throughout the promotion before the campaign ends, to take a look at what those numbers are, and just plug them into my spreadsheet so that I can kind of see where the open rates are. That's when I'll know, okay, I need to send another email because my open rates are a little bit lower, but I'm going to tweak my subject line. Maybe something didn't click about that subject line. So I don't necessarily change the entire email, but I will change the subject line based off of the previous email that I sent out that maybe didn't have a high enough open rate. If I'm seeing that I have a really high open rate, but then my click-through rates are sort of low, then I take a little bit of a look at just how I've described something leading up, like what the copy is saying. So is there something about the benefits? Is something not resonating? And I may make a change there. And it depends on, now I'm helping my clients do some of this, so I kind of get into the weeds of it a little bit more. I don't know if all business owners have the time to do all of these different tweaks. So sometimes it's an after the fact, and this based off of an upcoming promotion. Like, okay, these subject lines worked better than these. This call to action worked better, or it seems the button worked better. So those are the types of things that you could tweak for the futures.
Love it. Thank you. I love the thoroughness. And I know that you're saying, a lot of people aren't going to geek out, but I'd say a lot of people aren't doing any of that. So just taking on some of what you've said is going to change their world.
Yes. And I think I was going to say, having a spreadsheet where I keep one spreadsheet that every worksheet is of the previous promotion, so that I'm building off of that, so that I can look back at a previous promotion and see how many emails I sent, because sometimes that's where you could start to see that if your email list is having a little bit of fatigue, as well as like the past promotion. We had a lot of unsubscribes come email 8 of this, series that maybe we don't need that many emails, or we may opt not to send those 2 extra ones at the end, so you make those kind of changes, sometimes will help.
Thank you.
I do love the one spreadsheet idea. I was several years ago now managing a really big list, and that was the only way I could survive, was just to have it all in a big spreadsheet to see what was happening every day with multiple campaigns going out. And you very quickly, just almost by feel, if you're looking at these numbers every day, you do just know, oh, that's off. Oh, hang on, what happened there? And sometimes I'd go, oh, that's a bit off. And then we'd go and look at it, and maybe half the emails didn't fire and send or whatever, so you can pick up some issues there.
Yes, that's right.
You have given us so much value today. I so appreciate it. And I know our listeners will as well. But I think you've got another wonderful piece of goodness to give us. You've got a bit of a freebie for us.
Yes, I've created this guide to, as I've talked about throughout about the promotions. One of the things that makes a really big difference in having your promotions work is re-engaging that audience. And so I've created a guide that does this, where you can use AI. I've kind of created the prompts for you to be able to, so that if you're busy, you could just kind of plug this in. If you're not a big fan of AI, I also have email scripts at the end. The key is being able to start to re-engage your inactive subscribers, because we all have them. And if we do it often enough, then they don't move to the phase of being very old. It's just in the cold phase, which that is far easier to bring them back on the list. And if it's not the right fit, they'll unsubscribe. And again, then that's okay too. And you get to a solid engaged list. So the guide that I've created helps you walk through those steps and create those emails very quickly. You really only need 1 or 2 to go out and do that on a regular basis to keep your list actively engaged.
So good. So good. I love an email script, and I'm doing emails all the time, but I always love to see what experts in the area are doing. So we're going to put a link to that freebie that you can get from Kathy right here in the show notes. And a little later on in the show, I'll let you know where to find those show notes and get that freebie. Kathy, thank you so much to what Michelle said. So much value for our listeners. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
No, I think we covered everything. And I think that what it shows you is this: there's no one perfect formula. It's all about testing. It's about understanding your audience and keeping them active and engaged. And really, even having a small engaged list is going to result in better sales than having a large, unwieldy list that you're not really doing much with.
Again, thank you so much. We so appreciate you joining us here on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I really loved that conversation. We touched on so many things, and I could have talked with her all day, actually.
I know. Well, she kind of mentioned she was a bit of an email nerd, and I'm like, well, you're in the right place. A couple of other email nerds there, Kathy. So yeah, I agree with you. It was great to talk email and get into a bit of the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, well, we're such advocates of email. And if anything, I think it's more underused than misused in the businesses that we work with. So hopefully, if you're listening, you're taking away a few things. We've certainly taken away a few things. And I made a ton of notes. And one note was, go back and listen to this again, because there's lots of takeaways. But Michelle, do you have any main takeaways?
I do. I mean, she came right out of the gate with one of my favorite ones, which was that we're afraid to promote and afraid to sell on our email list. And we see this, don't we? Like often somebody will say, but they'll unsubscribe if I can't message my people more than once a month. It's like this, we're afraid of our email list that people are going to reject us. But why do we have this email list in the first place if we're not going to be communicating with them, if we're not going to be making our offers to them?
Yeah, it's really not valuable unless it is engaged, unless it is performing, unless it is not dormant. And so more is not a bad thing. And, once a month is probably, for most businesses, you could probably amp that up. But that fear if someone's going to subscribe, yeah, great. if they don't want what you have, then maybe they need to be on someone else's list. So, and Kathy mentioned a couple of times, a small engaged list is better than just collecting names that are never going to buy from you. So absolutely. I really loved her points about calls to action, because I think, again, one of the mistakes we make is that we try and use one email to do multiple things. Now, if it's a newsletter, then it's a smorgasbord. That's what a newsletter is. It has multiple calls to action. But if it's a promotional email that's directly related to something you want someone to do, to either make an appointment with you or come into your clinic or buy from you or download something, then we want it to be singular and we want to repeat it multiple times. So it's the one call to action repeated multiple times. And I love the tip about put it on its own line. Don't bury it inside of something else. And then check, did the call to action in a button work better than the call to action in a hyperlink? Her level of distinction was just awesome.
Yeah, and one of my takeaways was about the call to action too, +1 to everything you said. And also this idea that, like, by the time somebody has seen the call to action, they've already, like, kind of had some sense of, I want this. And it depends on where I'm at in the campaign. Sometimes I put a call to action right near the top of an email, but even so, I know that the rest of my campaign has had them wanting this thing, right? So you've got to be thinking about, what am I doing to build desire? And that call to action doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting by itself. It is like the punctuation mark. It's the thing where they go, yes, I'm in. Like, where do I sign? We want to be writing emails that really are evoking that feeling. So that call to action just feels like a bam, I'm going to hit that button or click that link.
And if up until now we haven't had as much success as we wanted from our email list, or we want to get more results, everything Kathy said about keeping your list engaged is so important, including that re-engagement sequence. So I know that the system that we use, after I think 90 days or 120 days, I can't remember exactly, Michelle, it actually sets someone to unengaged. And at that point, we can no longer email them. So we want to be really conscious about communicating with people often enough in that window that we have in order for them to stay engaged, and actively noticing, hey, you know what, they haven't opened anything or they haven't clicked on anything in X number of days. I'm going to send them 2 re-engagement emails. So the freebie that Kathy is offering is specifically about re-engagement. So I highly recommend you grab a copy, and I'll give you where to find it in just a moment. But really paying attention to, I want my list to be engaged. So what am I saying in my subject lines? What am I saying in my emails? Am I doing the 80-20 rule that she mentioned? Am I giving them something to do that is compelling, that's going to, because the moment they click inside your email, the system recognizes them as engaged. More so even than if they open the email, because with iOS and some technology, your opens aren't always 100% accurate, but someone clicking, that is recorded. That really renders them engaged. So one, think about more engaging emails, but also what is your re-engagement campaign? And she mentioned that she sends 2 emails in that period, giving people a chance to get re-engaged. But then you also heard she's not then attached to, okay, they don't want to be engaged, I'm going to take them off the list and I'm going to stop sending emails to people who are not responding, because it lowers the deliverability across all my emails. I hope you heard that.
Awesome. And Susie, I just wanted to mention too, as Kathy was speaking, I was remembering many episodes that we have on where we go deeper on some of these topics, because like this, oh my gosh, we could go deeper on just this one thing for this whole episode. So I'm going to make a note of those and put them in the show notes. But just as a top line, we have a whole episode devoted to subject lines, the 8 types of subject lines that will get your emails open, and it comes with a free download, which is actually a resource with examples of those subject lines. We've got an AI episode. We've actually got a bit where we talk about AI. We've got email episodes dedicated to emails. We've got call to action instructions in our offer episode. So there's a bunch of other resources that we'll link to in today's show notes. We'll let you know how to get those in just a moment. But consider this episode kind of like a hub episode, where if you want to go deeper into email, there'll be a bunch of other resources inside this podcast you can get to.
Absolutely. As we were going through the episode, I think, oh, that episode we did will be a good companion. Oh, this one will be a good companion. So anything we've mentioned here and some of these resources that Michelle alluded to and Kathy's freebie are all going to be over at herbusiness.com/emails that work, herbusiness.com/emails that work. You'll see a summary of this episode. You'll see links to the other episodes here on the show, and you'll see the details to be in contact with Kathy. And I would definitely be following her, getting on her email list so that you see what she's sending, but also taking up that freebie. And so it is a way for you to really look at, how do I get higher open rates, increase click-throughs, get more paying customers. And so the freebie really looks at how to reconnect with inactive subscribers. How do you get more engagement? How do you use AI, as you mentioned, to create more personalized communications? So get that today over at Emails That Work, herbusiness.com/emails that work. Alrighty. So we love having guests like Kathy. We love sharing expert tips to as many women as possible. So what would be really great, if you're listening and you enjoyed this episode, is if you would leave us a rating or a review over on Apple Podcasts. You can also rate and review over on Spotify if that's where you are listening. And we've got over 100 5-star reviews. So if you enjoyed today's episode, if you would take a moment to do that, we would absolutely love it. Someone who's a regular listener of the show who gave us a shout out, actually in her newsletter, is the lovely Belinda Weaver of Copyright Matters. She helps copywriters create businesses they love to work in. So whether you're an aspiring copywriter looking to quit your day job, or you are a working copywriter looking to grow and scale your income, she has courses and coaching and a membership that builds your skills and your confidence. And so in her weekly newsletter, which is one of my faves, she has a section called, links to like. And she said, I love the Content Sells podcast with Susie Daphnis and Michelle Falzon. The episodes are incredibly tactical and so damn useful, something I appreciate. Susie and Michelle invited me on last week, and that episode will go live in June. So that was just our last episode, or the one before that. So we'll put a link to that as well, because Belinda spoke in that episode about how to find the right copywriter for your business. So thank you, Belinda, for the shout out, and thank you for being a fabulous guest. And we will link to that episode in our show notes, which once again, you're going to find at herbusiness.com, emails that work. herbusiness.com, emails that work. Michelle, what have we got coming up in the next episode?
Susie, we've got some goodness coming up in the next episode. As always, we try and do our very best to have good stuff coming up. And what we've got coming up is, drum roll please, as I scroll through, most common website mistakes. Now, we've been talking a lot of fundamentals lately. We've been talking email marketing. Now we're going to shift to your website. There are a few things, Susie and I, see on your websites that might just be potholes, or in American, what is that in American or other languages? Potholes in Australia means those big holes you find in the road that you can sort of fall into, or blind spots. So we're going to talk about 5 of the most common website mistakes we're seeing, and we look at literally hundreds of websites a year. And these are the things that we just wish we could tell everybody. And guess what? We can, because we've got this show.
And that's coming up 2 weeks from now. And I'm excited. It's been a little while since we've done an episode on websites, and they continue to be something that so many small business owners rely on to get clients, to get appointments, to get people filling up their appointment books. And so listen in. That episode will drop 2 weeks from the release of this episode. If you don't already subscribe, wherever you are listening, firstly, thank you for listening. Second, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and that episode will drop right into your feed as soon as it's available. Michelle, anything you want to say before we go today?
Susie, we've said it, but I really loved what Kathy said about, don't be afraid of your email list. Don't be afraid to send those emails. Make them great and do a lot of the tips you've learned today, but get into it. Go for it. Be bold with that list. It is one of the most profitable assets you have in business.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time right here on the Content Sells podcast. Bye for now.